Imagine sitting in church, confessing your sins, and admitting that pornography has completely taken over your life. Not because you are single, but because you are married. And the real problem is waiting for you at home. Dane spoke. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." The priest replied, "Speak, son." Dane confessed, "I am now constantly watching porn. In traffic, at work, at home, late into the night. I can't stop. I explore other women sexually in my head." The priest asked, "Why do I feel there is more to this?" Dane let out a dry breath. This is not who I used to be, Father. My wife and I had an exciting relationship before we got married. She was passionate, alive. Desire was never a problem between us. But after we exchanged vows, something changed." He swallowed. "And when we had our son, it got worse." Dane's voice carried a quiet pain now. "I feel constantly starved for intimacy. Sex with my wife feels like a duty to her, something she performs out of obligation rather than desire. And when it happens, it never feels fulfilling. I feel lonely in my own house. I feel unwanted. My self-esteem has dropped so low that sometimes it feels like I'm living with a roommate rather than my wife." He paused again. "And whenever I try to express my need for intimacy, I'm treated with contempt, like I'm asking for something shameful." The priest listened. Dane continued, "That's what pushed me toward the world of pornography. It started small, but now I have multiple subscriptions on OnlyFans and other platforms. And the more I indulge, the more I feel like I'm losing my mind." Silence filled the booth. Then the priest asked quietly, "What reasons does your wife give when you ask for intimacy?" Dane gave a bitter chuckle. "She has many excuses. She's tired. She doesn't feel well. She's not in the mood. She says maybe later in the day. Sometimes she says I haven't helped enough around the house." The priest did not react to the sarcasm. Instead, he asked a simple question. "And do you help enough?" Dane shifted uncomfortably. "I do what I can, Father." The priest let the silence linger. Then he spoke again, this time with quiet firmness. "You must have this conversation with your wife. Not with anger, not with accusations, but with honesty. Tell her exactly how you feel, and tell her what you have been up to." Dane's breathing slowed as he listened. "Ask her what she feels the two of you must change. Marriage is not sustained by silence. Fix what is broken between you, so you do not keep returning to the same sins." The priest then raised his hands inside the confessional. His voice softened into prayer. "God, the Father of mercies, through the death and resurrection of his Son, has reconciled the world to himself." The prayer of absolution flowed through the quiet booth. When it ended, the priest spoke one final sentence. "Go in peace, son." And for the first time since he entered the church, Dane wondered whether peace was something he could truly find again. When Dane returned home that evening, the New York skyline glowed through the glass walls of their penthouse. Vivian stood in the kitchen, finishing dinner. They were both in their mid-30s, both African American, and judging by the luxury surrounding them, the marble counters, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the quiet elegance of their home, they had clearly worked hard to climb above the middle class in a brutal city like New York. Nothing about their success had come easy. Dane joined her at the counter and helped finish plating the food. The two moved around each other with the quiet familiarity of a long marriage. Soon they were seated at the dining table. Their 4-year-old son chatted happily through dinner until he finished his food and ran to his room upstairs. The moment the child disappeared up the staircase, Dane leaned forward. He didn't want to wait any longer. "Vivian, I need to talk to you about something." She looked at him carefully. "What is it?" Dane exhaled slowly. He told her what was on his mind. Vivian's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Then her eyebrows lifted sharply. "So, we're sharing our sex life with a priest now?" Her tone carried offense. Dane leaned back in his chair. Would it make any difference, he replied calmly, if I left the priest out of the story and just shared my concerns with you? Vivian shrugged, trying to keep the conversation casual. Trust me, Dane, this isn't intentional, and you know that, she sighed. Women are just not wired like men. Even when you guys are exhausted, you still wouldn't mind having sex. But women, she continued, when we're tired, we just want to sleep. Dane listened quietly. Vivian softened her tone slightly. I hear what you're saying, though. She waved a hand dismissively. We can have a few rounds tonight if that makes you feel better. Dane couldn't help but smile. And a couple of rounds. As many nights as possible every month, he teased. Vivian scoffed. I don't know about that, Mr. Dane Jordan. They both laughed. For a brief moment, the tension disappeared. But later that night, the mood began to shift. It took Vivian forever to tuck their son into bed. Meanwhile, Dane waited in the master bedroom, energized, hard-rocked, anticipation building with every passing minute. When Vivian finally entered the room, she barely looked at him. She walked straight into the bathroom and turned on the shower. 20 minutes later, she stepped out, wrapped in a robe. Dane sat up slightly, expecting her to join him. Instead, Vivian stretched and said casually, Can you give me a massage first? My back is killing me. Dane forced a smile. Sure. She lay down on the bed while Dane began massaging her shoulders and lower back. Vivian sighed with satisfaction as she scrolled through TikTok on her phone. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Her breathing slowly changed. The phone slipped from her hand. Vivian had fallen asleep, and Dane was still there, massaging her back. That moment was the final straw. Something inside him snapped. The next day at work, Dane found himself distracted. His mind wandered somewhere it had no business going. He caught himself staring across the office floor at the intern who had joined their firm a month earlier. Megan, 22 years old, blonde, beautiful. And in that moment, Dane began imagining a line he knew he should never cross. It had taken a few hours, but eventually Megan caught Dane staring across the office floor. At first, she pretended not to notice that her top boss was staring at her. But Megan was observant. She understood exactly what was happening. She knew something unusual was developing. And instead of shutting it down, she encouraged it.